Okay, this is our one of our very first interviews, video interviews for soulmusic.com. I'm really happy that a person who is a part of this very first, one of our first video interviews, soulmusic.com, is someone I have known for quite a long time. And we've worked together, we've written songs together, we recorded together. I've spent many hours in the place that you can see him right now, which is his studio in Los Angeles. So I'm really happy to welcome to soulmusic.com Preston Glass, renowned, award-winning producer, songwriter, musician. Have I missed anything?
All-around great guy. You missed
all-around great guy. Well, there you go. Well, first, welcome, Preston. Welcome. I'm going to put my headphones off, see if that works. Can you still hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I can't hear you as well without my headphones on, so put my headphones back on to make sure that we can both hear each other. All right. Anyway, so one of the great thing is we're doing this at a time when you are a nominee for induction into the Soul Music Hall of Fame at soulmusic.com, and as you know, that's by popular vote. So it'd be great to hear from you what you think about the fact that you are on the verge, possibly, of being inducted into the Soul Music Hall of Fame.
Well, just to even be, I know I sound like one of those Academy Award people, just to be nominated.
Yeah, you do.
But it is, I mean, because most of those people on the list with me are people that I'm a fan of, and I have their records and their music, and so just to be on that list is amazing, and I want to thank everybody at soulmusic.com for even considering me.
Well, you're welcome, and it's well deserved. So the other thing that we really want to talk about is you have a brand. I'm gonna promote you here. Brand new CD.
Right.
Preston Glass presents Dynamic Duets.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that project. In particular, because one of the tracks, as you know, has done really well in the UK. And while this interview, of course, will be going out to everyone in the world, we should note that the track No Pain, No Gain, which features Clif Payne and Freda Payne, who apparently are not related.
Correct.
Singing on this track that's done really well on the UK solar radio charts, and we don't really have a soul chart in England. We only have radio charts for soul music. It's done really well on that. So can you tell us a little bit about how this project came about? Tell us a little, because you've got some great pairings. You've also got little Anthony and George Benson. You've got Evelyn Champagne, people on here that people will know, Evelyn Champagne King, Terry Dexter, yourself, Phil Perry, and yourself. So amongst others. So tell us a little bit about how this project evolved. How did it come about?
Well, it's very interesting. It kind of came about through two different worlds. Since you mentioned the Clif Payne, Freda Payne duet, I want to give a shout out to Nigel Lowes and Gary Van de Bush, UK people there that did this special remix of this song. This song was actually recorded on Clif Payne's solo album, and it was released back in February of 2016.
Yeah.
Sometime this past summer, I was contacted by the guys from Disco Soul Gold, Solid Gold, which is Nigel and Gary, and they wanted to know if they could be involved in doing some remixes of some named people. And at that point, I had just worked with Little Anthony and did a duet with George Benson, which that project is still being recorded, Little Anthony solo album. But I said, yeah, sure, I'll send you the vocals and see what you guys come up with. And they did a bang-up, great job. And that's the first thing that happened. And they said, you got any more? And I told them about the Freda Payne song. And they did actually 2 remixes on that. Both of them are fantastic. I like their version better than my original. So we talked about, and they're going to be releasing it on, they have a special project they're finishing up now. But in the meantime, I was able to get permission to put it on this Duets album. But before the Duets album even surfaced, the song took off in the UK and went to, I believe, top 10 there. And Freda Payne is so happy. She said it's her first hit in 30 years.
That's true.
And it's just very interesting how the song came about, because while working with Clif Payne and Larry Batiste, who was the co-writer of that song, we said, let's see if we can get somebody to do a duet on this album. I said, well, I know somebody with the same last name. How about Freda Payne?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's kind of a joke. And then we said, maybe we can write a song with Payne in the title, and we can have 3 Paynes on there. And we did it, and Freda heard the song, liked it, loved Clif's voice, never met him. Clif came to L.A. and they recorded actually together in the studio.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, but then, you know, months later is when the remix happened, and that's when the song took off. So once again, I'd like to thank Nigel and Gary on that. But how this duet project happened, I released a little solo CD back in August of last year called Stuff That Matters. There was a song on the album that I co-wrote with Narda Michael Walden, a longtime collaborator, called I Remember, which I sang solo-wise on my album.
Yeah.
I did a release party for that album in August of last year, where typical of a lot of my release parties, I don't want to sing all the songs. I consider myself more of a songwriter, but I have some of my very talented vocalists come in and do renditions of my songs. So that song, I Remember, that particular evening was done by Terry Dexter and Johnny Manuel. And who knew? We just knew that they were going to do a great job, and that would be done that evening, and that would be the end of it. But there were some people in attendance that were so blown away by that performance. They asked, has that song ever been recorded like that with them singing? I said, no. They said, well, we would like to back that song and their performance, and if you guys can go and record it and put money behind it and so on and so forth. And it turned out to end up being a whole album of duets. Yeah. Which, so that's how that happened, just really because of a live performance of that song.
Amazing. That's amazing. That's an amazing story, like how one thing evolved into something else. I'm going to ask you a few questions about, first, let's go back a moment to Freda and Clif. Did either of them check to see if they were in any way related?
Well, it's kind of like an after thing now, because now that they've spent time together and talked and performed together, they've started looking into a lot of similar backgrounds they have and connections, the locations of family members. So I don't know if what do they call it? Ancestry.com is going to get a because that sure would be a great backstory.
It really would. Yeah. So once just to understand it, so once you were asked to do this one duet that I Remember with Terry Dexter and Johnny Manuel, was it from there that you started to put together the other tracks for the other songs, or apart from the Freda and Clif one, which obviously is an obvious one to include? So the rest are all brand new recordings that you did subsequently?
Actually, it's about half and half. Okay. What happened was, of course, you mentioned the Clif and Freda thing, but even before that, Gary and Nigel did the remix of the George Benson and Little Anthony thing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Seemed like it just happened to be a duet. Of course, that's the theme of this album, all duets. So that fit in nicely. And then the Nicole Mitchell, Phil Perry cut was originally done a few years ago for Nicole Mitchell's solo album.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that was a while back. Also, the Evelyn Champagne King, Blair Clark was done for Blair Clark's solo album. Evelyn came in as a friend and did that. Let's see. I think almost everything else was brand new. Okay. Yeah. And we picked a couple of cover songs and
I noticed. I've got to ask you, the pairing of Little Anthony and George Benson is not an obvious one. So can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
I was working on Little Anthony's solo album. This is actually, even though he's been in the business many years and had many hits, he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
This is actually his first solo album. He did one a while back, but that doesn't really count.
Okay.
But this was actually without the Imperials, so he wanted to try some different things. He said, you know, we can now we can experiment. I can do a duet. It doesn't have to be one with a female. It could be, you know, like a Sam and Dave kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
He said, and he in particular said, you know, we got a lot of ballads. It'd be nice to do something kind of up tempo. So I reached out to George Benson, just not knowing if George, what his response would be, but because he's a friend, I wanted to see what he would think about playing guitar at least, and then maybe singing. Before I could even tell him about the song, when I said the name Lil Anthony, he flipped.
Wow.
And said, "You mean the Lil Anthony? Oh, man." And, you know, we're discussing cost, and he was like, shoot, I don't even care what it costs. I'll sing, you know, just sing. So that just goes to show that sometimes these legends, even though they are legends themselves, they look up to other artists too. And that's how, I guess, the love affair between them two started. And I guess Lil Anthony also was a big George Benson fan.
Yeah.
So they hit it off well.
Now, you, of course, those who are familiar with your discography would know that you're responsible for one of George Benson's biggest hits during the 80s.
Yes, Kisses in the Moonlight.
Yeah.
It's been included on a lot of his greatest hits. I also did one called Shiver, which wasn't as big a hit, but I noticed that's included on some of his anthology and greatest hits. So I've known for a while. Yeah.
Did you produce it, or was it just, so you wrote the song, did you also produce it?
Yeah, Kisses in the Moonlight, I co-wrote with Narda Michael Walden, who was the producer on that, and Jeffrey Cohen.
Yeah.
Shiver, actually, I did co-produce it.
You did, okay. All right, so you guys do go back. Now, how about Lil Anthony? Is he somebody that you only met recently, or had you known him?
Yes,
before?
yes, and let's see, 2014. I reached out, believe it or not, to him through Facebook.
Really?
Yes, that's how I met him. I was actually a friend of his on. No, I don't think I was a friend. I was just inboxing him, and I was thinking I was reaching him, but I was actually reaching his son.
Yes,
his son is his manager, so that's how the talk started happening. And me being a big fan of his early stuff, and in particular, there was an album by David, a mutual friend of ours, Tom Bell produced.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the connecting point. I mentioned to Lil Anthony that Tom was my mentor, and I could give him music like that, and so we start talking. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting about that. It's just so funny how things connect. You know, I have a reissued label here in the UK, Soul Music Records, and we actually did reissue 2 Little Anthony and Imperials albums, one of which is the Tom Bell album. And then there's a second album that came after that, which had never actually been properly released anywhere except in one country in the world, which was not the US. I can't remember what country it was.
I think it was Philippines, I think, right?
Yeah,
Philippines?
somewhere else, yeah. And so that's called Hold On, I think.
Right.
And that one features Tom's brother, Tony.
Yes.
Late brother. Yeah. And so those 2 albums, we put those out a few years ago. So I'm familiar with that album, On a New Street. It's called On a New Street.
Right.
Interesting how that all connects together. Wow. Yeah. Now, there's somebody else I want to mention that's also on the this new album. You have Dynamic Duets. I see it's volume 1. That means there's likely to be a volume 2.
We're hoping that's just a little hint.
A hint, okay. It's somebody else that we both have as a mutual friend, which is Evelyn Champagne King.
Yes.
And,
she's like a sister to us, my wife and I. And we've done a few things. Of course, David, you and I produced a tune on her on the Time Life album. Yes. And then I actually produced a whole, I guess you would say 90% of a CD that she put out called Open Book. Oh, but we've known her Yeah, we've known her for about 25 years or so, and
Wow.
her
Wow.
husband, Freddie,
Freddie.
is also
Freddie Fox.
Freddie.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what I have to say, just as we're talking, you know, one of the things I think that's amazing, and I'd like you to just say a little bit about this. You know, we live in a very different age from the time when both of us, you could say, came up in music industry. You know, for me, it starts really in the 60s, late 60s, and then through the 70s and so on. And I know that you're public, while you were definitely listening to music, playing music, I think your public persona, so to speak, as a producer, songwriter, really began in the 80s. Is that
Yes.
correct, you would say? Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is a very different time that we live in now, where many artists write their own songs. Back then, there was still a demand for songwriters, not quite as much as there is now. And of course, we lived in an environment, it was a different environment, even in terms of the studio and how people recorded. So one of the questions I have for you is, how is this a really simple question? How have you been able to continue to record, produce, work with people through all these decades, and particularly now when we live in a different world, a different recording world, a different music industry world? Can you say a little bit about
Yeah.
your ability to keep going?
That's a good question, and it's not a just a very simple answer, but it's a combination of things. I think one, I have to stay on top of technology. Very example of that is a few minutes ago when I just I know how to do this video, but here we are doing it.
Yes,
So
we are. Yes.
I'm not afraid to try new things, including becoming an engineer, which I've been doing now for about 15 years, which I
Wow.
never thought I'd do. I
Yes.
thought I was a songwriter and musician. But now in these changing times, I think what keeps me working is, even though I'm primarily a songwriter, I think what keeps me working is that I'm producing projects.
Yes.
I might get an artist that writes all their own songs. They don't need me as a songwriter. So, but because they like my production or some of the ideas I have for their songs, that keeps me working. And I'd say also a lot of people that have returned back to me, like an Evelyn or whoever like that, it's because of keeping a good rapport with these people, treating them right. Not, you know, I know some producers look at a project like, hey, let's just do it and go on to the next. But these are people's lives. And, you know, sometimes I've connected and made longtime friends with these people, George Benson, and Lil Anthony's now a great friend. So, and yourself. So I try and stay in good graces with these people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's brilliant. And just for the reference for people who I mean, I know your history, and I know anyone who's been in music or knows about music knows a little bit about your history. I know you that your first mentor, as you mentioned, was Tom Bell, and then you had a period of time working with Nada, Michael Walden, and then what year did you branch out on your own? Do you remember what year that was?
Yeah, that was 1986.
Yeah.
My brother Alan and I started Glass House Productions along with my wife, and then I branched out to Glass Slipper Productions with my wife, and Almo Irving kind of was a partner with me.
Okay.
Because he helped hook me up with people like Maurice White from Earth, Wind & Fire, and many projects that I did after that.
Yeah. So it was 1986, and I'm remembering, of course, you working with Kenny G. You just mentioned Maurice White and the group Earth, Wind & Fire, and so there've been quite a lot of projects since 1986, right?
Oh yeah, it's exhausting looking at them, but a lot of people that you might know, different genres of music. You mentioned Kenny G. That's been considered maybe the first smooth jazz artist, and now that's a genre out there.
Yeah.
But then, you know, go all the way to the other side with the funk music of Earth, Wind & Fire. And I've done some projects where someone might consider it completely pop. Japanese artists like Hiroko, she's very much a pop artist. I like all kinds of music. So I even did a country song with Anita Pointer from the Pointer Sisters.
Did you?
So
Wow.
I guess it depends on the song and the project. I love working with new artists too. And,
Yeah.
and back to this Duets album, that's what I really appreciated about being involved in this, because I was able to introduce some new artists, people like Brandon Watts, who to me is like a modern Sam Cooke. He's only 29 years old, but he's got that kind of talent. Ayanna Lee, who is Jimmy Ruffin's granddaughter.
Really?
Yeah, she's 16 years old, but she's phenomenal. There's quite a few new artists on here, and I think mixing it up with some of the old school, I'm trying to pass the torch to the new.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I know we could talk, you and I could talk for hours, and that probably would be interesting for you and I. It might not be interesting for the people listening. Then really, just I was going to ask you the final question in our interview. If you have to sum up how, if you look at what you're up to right now and you look ahead to see what you would want to be doing, what have you not yet done that you want to do? Oh, well, let's do a summary first of how do you feel about how things are moving in terms of, obviously still working. One of the things I was going to say, I just remembered to say that has always impressed me in our conversations about the kind of work you do is that you make sure it's global. I know you've worked with people from many, you mentioned Japan, and I know you've worked with artists from different countries. And I don't think that's necessarily normal. I don't think that's usual. I think a lot of producers kind of stay with the territory that they're in, meaning the physical territory they're in. So say just a little bit about that, about the fact that you've like branched out to make sure you work with international artists.
Yeah, I guess in my travels, so to speak, I've realized that the United States is not the only game in town. By traveling to Cannes, France, and going to the Meet-Em, meeting people there. Facebook has been very good at introducing me to people all over the world. There's an artist I just finished 10 songs with. She's from Australia, co-produced with a gentleman named Joe Mandica, but her name is Stephanie Angelini. Okay. I wasn't able to get her on the Duets project because I just met her, actually.
Okay.
But I was able to sneak her in on the listening party for the Duets. She sang a duet, a Smokey song, and then she sang one of her new songs that's going to be on the album that we're finishing mixing right now. So that's literally all on the other side of the globe there. Yeah. And but I'm excited because the kind of music is not. She's only I think she must be like 21, I think. Yeah. So that keeps me young too. I'm trying to not just work with the legends. Mm-hmm. Lil Anthony's 75. I hope he doesn't get mad for me telling him.
Well, we could look it up. We could look it up on Google. Don't worry.
Right. But I'm doing that just to say he's at the top of his game. He sounds exactly the same, and so that inspires me.
Yeah. And then, looking ahead, what is it that you see you haven't yet accomplished that you'd like to do?
Well, I want to get more into, I guess you would say, television, movies, the visual marriage of music and visual. Yeah. Not only in doing music or providing music for those avenues, but even content for the actual show, whether it's a documentary, because I love stories, telling stories, hearing stories about, the history of music, or maybe it could even be a fictional, maybe a fact-based fictional story about somebody. I'm involved with something now. I can't get too detailed about it, that it's going to be telling the life story of Carlos Santana.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there's somebody involved that is getting ready to fund a whole mini-series about that.
Amazing.
And so, yeah, that's going to be exciting.
So you definitely do stay active, right, Preston? You're not retiring anytime soon.
Can't do that. I can't do that.
Well, listen, it's been great speaking with you. I mean, again, what's funny to me, speaking to you in an actual place where I've sat with you, recorded with you, had long, great conversations. It's funny that you're looking at me in my living room and I'm looking at you at your famous studio, The Hang.
The Hang, yeah.
So I just want to thank you again for your time today and for
Thank
doing
you.
this interview for soulmusic.com. And, you know, it will be up online soon in the next few days. And
Great.
hopefully that'll be an incentive for people who haven't yet voted for you in the Soul Music Hall of Fame to go to Facebook and vote because it's free.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dave.
Okay, thanks. Okay.